Hello, how is everybody doing? Thank you so much for coming to this talk. I'm glad everyone was able to make it. And so my name is Abdullah Hashmi. I'm a computer science major, senior here at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about C# today. So some of the basics of C#, Microsoft came out with it in 2000 and announced it as part of their .NET framework. So this was a big deal because the .NET framework is widely used today, and also so is C#. So C#, the compiler targets the .NET framework. So unfortunately, you cannot write C# code in any other framework. It must be in the .NET framework that Microsoft has created. And I'm pretty sure they did that on purpose. So it's all proprietary to Microsoft technology. So the language is based on a lot of the similarities between the famous object-oriented languages today, like C, C++, and Java. And when we look at some of the code, you'll see a lot of the similarities between Java and C#. You'll hear me say that word a lot. I'll look at how similar these two are. C# is really unique because I feel like it's a combination of those languages, where C++ and C, you're allowed to use pointers, and C# allows for that. And also, it's more powerful than Java and more structured than Visual Basic. And going into some of the actual coding aspects, the readability is very similar to Java because C# is a very type-heavy language, just like Java, where you have lots of types and naming conventions. And also, writability is actually easier than Java because when you're using the .NET framework or you're working in Visual Studios, the autofill is pretty much there for every word, every line of code that you write. It makes it really easy for you. So both readability and writability is good for that. So some of the data types in C#, it distinguishes between two different categories of data types. Number one is the value type. So these are like the regular variables that you store, similar to Java, where they store its value directly into the variable. And as you can see in the example, there are two objects of type int created x and y. Second one is reference types. So these types are stored. It stores the reference to the value. So as you can see in the example, there are two myClass objects. Object 1, it creates a new class, and object 2, it's referencing to object 1. So only one instance is created, but both are pointing to the same object. So you can see kind of, again, the similarities between Java in typing and referencing. So here's some of the types in C# that are used, and they are very similar. Some of the stuff that Java doesn't have, like pointers, so there are similarities, but C# kind of covers a bit more ground when it comes to typing and using variables in the best way possible. So again, similarities between Java and C#. These are very crucial. Some of the concepts, if you've taken Java courses, all of you recognize these concepts in encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. All of these are available and used in C# every day. And just like the statements in Java, if and switch statements for conditionals, and then loops, all the traditional do, while, and for loops, and for each statements. So a little personal story is when I first started learning coding, I learned Java first, and my first internship was I was thrown into an environment where they made web applications and they used C# in the .NET framework. And since I had done Java before, it made it really easy for me to understand the code of C# and understand what was going on in each method. The only thing that was kind of difficult was understanding the .NET framework, but due to the similarities between Java and C#, I had an easier time learning C# at that internship. So this is some Java code versus some C# code, and as you can see, two very simple codes where they look very similar, as I said before. The only thing is C# uses using statements as reference types. So like it's kind of like how Java uses imports. C# uses that, and you can also use using statements as a part of a method. So you can just have using math and then have braces, and you can just have it as just that method and use it that way. So so this is an example of how similar it is, especially also the comments are the exact same, how you comment in C# or Java. So why use it? Why not just use Java? Why, like, if they're so similar, why is C# so great? So C# is used worldwide. It's very popular programming languages at the moment, and it's gaining traction every day. Like it's getting more and more popular. It's a great language for game development, and it's widely used to create games with the Unity game engine. I know a lot of the big gaming companies, they use C# to create their games, and that's a growing field with this programming language also. And as I mentioned before, when I was learning C# for the first time, it is complex due to the framework of .NET, but it was also easy at the same time because of the similarities to Java and the heavy typing. I understood exactly what was going on in methods and in classes. And one thing I find really cool is that you can now build native mobile apps, iOS and Android applications using C#. That's one thing I'm really passionate about and I love doing. So it's really cool that you're able to do that with C# now, especially in iOS, because iOS before was only proprietary to people who had Macs, and you could only code it in Objective-C. But now you can use C# to make an iOS app on your Mac. And the last thing is C# is a very in-demand skill and pays really well in the workforce. A lot of times you're going to go in and a lot of the problems that they have are, well, we need just a web application or we just need a mobile application. And C#, the way that it's structured, it makes it easy for you to build these types of applications with a strong back end in C#, a .NET front end, and SQL database. So it's really easy. So now we're going to go through a quick demo of how to create an iOS app with C#.
Hey everyone, so enough talk, let's dive right into the demo, and I'm going to show you how to start making an iOS app using C#. So let's hit new project down at the bottom. We're going to select iOS, and there are multiple options here. You can do a master detail, tabbed, which have features embedded already into them. We're just going to do single view app with the C# language. And yeah, so we'll just call this test app. And okay. And so just the same thing, project name, solution name. This is where the location will be. We'll go ahead and hit create. And this will take a bit to load up. And so while that's loading up, talk to you about how when you see some of the code in here, pre-written code too, you'll see a lot of the similarities in Java where you see in C#, as I mentioned before, which makes it a lot easier to learn. So here we are in the Solution Explorer on the left, and here are all of our classes and methods, or classes and storyboards. So the .cs are the C# classes. So if we go to main, this pretty much runs the application. So as you can see, there is a main method just like in Java. So now let's dive into the storyboard, which is an important part of Xamarin and or Visual Studio's on Mac and C, or especially making iOS apps with C#. And so now that we're in the storyboard, let's create first a label. We'll just put this at the top of our home page and center it a little bigger. Call it first iOS app. Make the font a little bigger at the bottom. And once you click it, then the properties pops up and you can adjust the labels and everything. So now let's add a button. So we're going to go ahead and just add this button right in the middle, make it a little bit bigger. And we'll call this button go to, or we'll say this button says go to next page. And we'll make that a bit bigger. 25, okay. Made it a little too big, so that's okay. Alright, so now we got our button, we got our first label, and now we're getting going. So now what we have to do with this button to access it is we need to name it. So just like when we create variables, this is going to be a button that we have to set. Data type is going to be button, a UI button. So let's just call this next page button. Okay, and then we hit enter, and then it's registered. And the code behind for the storyboard here is in viewcontroller.cs. So here is the code behind. As you can see, it is class-based, just like Java, and has a few methods that get it started, like the view did load. That's the base method, and it loads up the screen. And if you go to that arrow and click the viewcontroller designer.cs, you'll see that our next page button was registered. And yes, so now let me show you how we will navigate. Now we have to do this to get to the next page. We have to add a navigation controller. I'll put this right over here, and we can delete this view that they give us. And now what we want to do is we want to set our view controller to the main, to the root. So we'll put this behind navigation controller, and then I'm going to hit control, and on the bottom I'm going to click and hold and then drag it over to the next page, and then the relationship, this will be the root now. So now the app understands this is the root, and if we need to access the next page, we'll write the code to do that for this button. So let's create a new page first. So we'll go right click on the solution and add a new file. Go to iOS, scroll down to view controller. So we'll just call it second page or second view controller, because they like naming them by controllers. Maybe I think page sounds a little better. But okay, so then what it does, it creates the kind of the storyboard file and the code behind for that file. So if you want to change anything, manipulate any data, which we will do. So here we'll add a couple labels. First we'll add this label to the top. Make this a bit bigger, and we're going to call it "You made it" to the next page. And then so now let's first delete this label. Now let's go to our view controller for our main page, and let's set let's get to that next page. So we go back to the main storyboard, and the cool thing about Visual Studios is all you have to do is, when you have the name of the button registered already, you just double click it, and you just use add the event handler and just move it down to wherever you want. I'll put it at the bottom. So a new method is created for you. The next page button, touch up inside, it's like on clicked for anybody using Android or have used Android in the past. So what we'll do now is we will create a new page, a new second view controller called control. We'll just call it controller equals new second view controller. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to this controller now when this button is clicked. So So we're going to have to use this navigation controller that we set up in the main storyboard and have it push the controller or the new page or the new second view controller that we just created. So we'll save this and let's run it. For a little bit, there we go, build successful. And you can load it on all different types of iOS devices. iPhone 8 is the newest, so it usually defaults to that. But yeah, so while it's loading up our app. And there we go. There's our simulator, and it's going to launch the app. And here we are. So now you see the labeled first iOS app, and we'll just click go to next page, and you see it takes us to the next page. See the new label, you made it. And that is pretty much it. A simple iOS app, and you get it to include paging. So yeah, thank you.
You enjoyed that demo. That was just a quick little tutorial on how to make an iOS app with paging using C#. I hope that it was informative. I hope you guys learned something today. And I hope that you go out and use this programming language, because it's very popular, and if you learn it, you won't be sorry. So thank you.